Seraphine had always believed she understood dragons. She had studied them from the skies above the cliffs, from the safety of her gilded tower, and from the rows of scrolls documenting their legends and deeds. Dragons were majestic. Dragons were strong. Dragons were invincible, or so she thought. So when she saw a small, pale human kneeling beside a crippled dragon hatchling, her first reaction was laughter. Not polite, not quiet, but sharp and high-pitched, carrying across the rocky cliffs and echoing off the stone walls. The hatchling's scales were patchy and dull, mottled with scars from failed flights and rough landings. One tiny wing bent unnaturally at the elbow, as if frozen mid-motion. Its claws were too soft, too weak to grasp the jagged rocks beneath it. Its mother, Mythical, hovered nearby, her own wings trembling as she watched the human kneel beside her child. "Is it always this dramatic?" Seraphine asked, gesturing toward the hatchling with a finger. Her tone was equal parts amusement and disbelief. Lyra, the hatchling's older sister, tightened her grip, the warmth of her hand the only reassurance the dragon had ever known. "It's not dramatic. It's scared," she said, her voice firm. "And he can help." Seraphine's laugh pierced the morning air again. "Help? A human? With a crippled dragon? That's ridiculous. You're all fools." Rowan Harland, the human mechanic, did not look up. He had learned long ago not to engage with arrogance, not when results could speak louder than insults. Instead, he calmly removed his sleeves, revealing calloused arms streaked with grease and faint burn marks. He knelt beside the hatchling, inspecting its malformed wing with careful, deliberate touches, as if handling the most delicate of machines. The hatchling lifted its head weakly, eyes flickering toward him. There was a spark of recognition or maybe curiosity, something it had never shown before. Seraphine's laughter sharpened. "It won't fly. It's useless. And you think you can fix it?" Lyra's eyes flashed. "It's not useless, and he can. Just watch." Rowan examined the wing, murmuring under his breath, tracing scarred tendons, checking joint alignment, measuring angles as if the tiny dragon were a complex mechanism rather than living tissue. He jotted down notes on a small metal clipboard he had brought, calculations, adjustments, potential risks. Seraphine rolled her eyes. "Calculations won't make it fly. A human cannot repair dragon bones, nor can you teach it to overcome weakness that is in its very body." Rowan looked up briefly. "Do you want me to talk? Or do you want to step aside and watch me work?" The woman's eyes narrowed. "I'll stay. I want to witness the inevitable failure." Lyra's jaw tightened. "Then watch closely," she said softly, almost to herself, "because you might be surprised." Mythical, the mother, lowered her massive head until it hovered over her child. She exhaled a low rumble, a mix of fear and hope. Her child had been rejected by the rest of the dragon community, and yet here it was, a human kneeling beside it, undeterred. Rowan began gently manipulating the bent wing. He palpated the joint, massaging stiff muscles, pressing against weak bones, all while monitoring the hatchling's reaction. His hands were firm but careful, his movements confident yet tender. "You'll need more warmth?" Lyra murmured, holding her hands above the dragon's thin chest. She channeled heat into it, not magic, but energy drawn from her own body in a focused way. It was small, but enough to stimulate circulation and muscle movement. Rowan nodded, incorporating her assistance. "Good. Keep it steady. We're going to need patience more than force." Seraphine snorted. "Patience won't change biology." Hours passed. Rowan adjusted the wing repeatedly, repositioning tendons, supporting muscles, and coaxing the malformed joints to stretch gradually. Lyra's warmth pulsed in tandem, soothing the hatchling's pain and instilling a cautious sense of balance. The sun moved across the sky, shadows creeping along the rocks as Seraphine grew restless, pacing, muttering under her breath about human arrogance and foolish hope. Then something remarkable happened. A flicker of movement, a small, hesitant flutter of the bent wing. The hatchling's head lifted, its eyes widening as if it could feel strength returning. Its tiny claws flexed, pressing into the rocks beneath it. Rowan adjusted the wing again, careful not to push too far. Seraphine froze mid-step. It moved. Lyra smiled, though her lips trembled with hope and exhaustion. Yes, and it will move more. Watch closely. Minutes later, the hatchling managed a small hop. Not flight, not yet, but balance. Strength returning to a body that had been considered broken. Rowan stepped back slightly, allowing the hatchling to test its wings without interference. Slowly it flapped, trembling, unsteady, yet deliberate. Its mother, Orethiel, let out a low rumble of approval, nudging her child with gentle encouragement. Seraphine's laughter faltered. She opened her mouth, but nothing came. Her eyes widened as the hatchling took a small, controlled hop, then another. Lyra cheered softly, but Rowan raised a hand, signaling calm. Steady, not too much. By the time the sun was nearing the horizon, the hatchling had managed a series of tiny, controlled flights across the rocky cliff. Each attempt stronger than the last, each landing more confident. Seraphine's lips parted in disbelief. Impossible, a human. Fixing a dragon. Flying again. Lyra laughed softly, tears glinting in the fading sunlight. Not impossible, just underestimated. Orethiel lowered her massive head, nudging Rowan gently. The human smiled, hands still streaked with dragon blood, sweat, and grease. All in a day's work, he murmured. For the first time, Seraphine realized her mistake. She had mocked them, laughed at weakness, ridiculed hope. And yet here, before her eyes, a crippled dragon learned to fly again. And it was because a human had refused to give up. As the hatchling soared clumsily across the last rays of sunset, Seraphine swallowed her pride. She could no longer deny the truth. Strength was not always measured in size or ferocity. Sometimes, strength came from courage, persistence, and the willingness to defy expectation. Rowan watched the small dragon land successfully on Lyra's shoulder, wings trembling but fully functional. Orethiel exhaled a puff of warm air that carried both relief and gratitude. Seraphine finally spoke, quietly this time. I underestimated you all. Lyra smiled softly. You're not the first, and you won't be the last. Above them, the wind carried the echo of tiny wings against stone. Hope had returned, carried on the flapping rhythm of a dragon who had once been dismissed as broken. And as Rowan looked at the pair, dragon and human, side by side, he realized that perhaps this was the beginning of something far greater than he had ever imagined. A world where the impossible became possible, and where courage bridged species, hearts, and destiny itself. The morning after the hatchling's first successful flight, the harbor was unusually quiet. Even the gulls seemed to hover at a respectful distance, sensing something extraordinary in the air. Lyra had stayed beside her mother and the recovering dragon through the night, ensuring that Orethiel's warmth and her own energy flowed steadily. Rowan, as usual, had been awake most of the night as well, tinkering with tools and devices, making adjustments that only a human could imagine but a dragon could appreciate. Seraphine, however, had returned, not with mockery this time, but with curiosity sharpened by disbelief. She arrived at the edge of the cliff just as the sun began to rise, spilling golden light over the waves and casting Orethiel's pearlescent scales into radiant brilliance. You've done it again? Seraphine asked, voice less scornful and more incredulous. It flew. Lyra looked up from where she was guiding the hatchling through gentle flaps and landings. Yes, she said simply. It flew, and it will fly better every day. Seraphine's sharp eyes softened, though her pride prevented her from fully admitting surprise. I thought you humans were incapable of understanding dragon physiology. But, somehow, her voice trailed off, hesitant, as though she were grappling with a new truth that challenged everything she believed. Rowan, leaning against a boulder with crossed arms, gave her a faint smile. We're not perfect, but we do understand machines, patterns, and problem-solving. Sometimes dragons are just complicated machines waiting for the right touch. Lyra shot him a brief look, a mixture of admiration and exasperation. She didn't bother correcting him. The way he phrased it made sense in his human logic. Orethiel stirred beside them, rising to her massive feet. Her wings unfolded fully, casting a protective shadow over her child. With a slow, controlled movement, she nudged the hatchling forward, encouraging it to make its first sustained flight along the cliffs. The small dragon took off. Its wings flapped uncertainly at first, then found rhythm. Air currents caught under its weakened feathers or scales rather and lifted it higher. Lyra's voice rose in excitement, blending with the faint, harmonic rumble from Orethiel. Seraphine blinked. Her hands tightened at her sides. She had spent years among dragons, observing their pride, their power, their apparent invulnerability. And yet here she stood, watching a human, a small hatchling, and a weakened dragon mother cooperate to achieve what she had dismissed as impossible. Rowan crouched slightly, adjusting the brace he had fashioned for the hatchling's wing. "Not bad," he muttered, mostly to himself. "One more adjustment here, and it should hold steady under full flaps." Lyra leaned closer to her sister. "See? You can do it." The hatchling arced over the cliffs, then dove briefly before landing on a flat rock, shaking its wings to regain balance. Its landing was shaky but successful. Orethiel nudged it gently, approving. Lyra knelt beside the young dragon, stroking its head. "Good. Very good." Seraphine's expression was unreadable. For the first time, she seemed uncertain, almost hesitant. She had always measured dragons by power and dominance. Now, she realized she had underestimated something far more subtle: persistence, empathy, and ingenuity. "You really fixed it," she said softly, stepping closer. "And it listens to you?" Rowan shrugged. "It listens because it trusts. Because I took time to understand what was wrong instead of just applying force. That's the difference." Lyra's voice softened, though it carried strength. "You laughed at us yesterday, but we weren't trying to impress you. We were trying to save her. My mother. This hatchling. Life." Seraphine's gaze flickered to Orethiel, who now hovered beside her child, glowing with renewed vitality. "Life," she repeated. The word sounded strange, almost foreign in her mouth. She had studied dragons for years, but understanding them as living, feeling beings was a lesson she had not learned in scrolls or observation alone. The hatchling hopped forward again, nudging Rowan's knee affectionately. The human crouched, rubbing the small dragon's head, and whispered under his breath. "Almost there, steady." Seraphine's eyes widened as she noticed the subtle interactions between human and dragon. It was not dominance. It was care, a rhythm of trust and patience that allowed even the weakest creature to find strength. "You really understand them," she said finally, the faintest note of admiration entering her voice. Rowan looked at her calmly. "No, I don't understand dragons fully, but I understand fixing broken things. Sometimes that's enough." Lyra laughed softly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Sometimes enough is all it takes to change everything." The hatchling took another flight, longer this time, circling Orethiel once before landing gently beside Lyra. Its wings were steady now, muscles engaging fully. The bright light of the rising sun caught its scales, making them shimmer with hope, a tangible aura of life renewed. Seraphine's breath caught in her throat. I didn't think it was possible," she whispered. She had believed in the natural order. Strong dragons survive, weak dragons perish, humans watch and remain powerless. And yet here was proof to the contrary. Orethiel exhaled softly, warmth radiating in gentle waves. Her silver eyes glimmered with gratitude. The mother's gaze swept across the cliffs, settling briefly on Seraphine. It was a subtle warning. Those who dismiss the weak may one day face consequences they cannot anticipate. Rowan stood, brushing dirt and grease from his hands. "We've done what we can for today," he said, voice calm. "Tomorrow we'll work on endurance. And the day after, controlled aerial maneuvers. In time, it'll fly as well as any hatchling born whole." Lyra nodded, gently guiding her sister toward the small dragon. See? It's not weakness. It's learning, healing, growth. Seraphine's gaze softened further. She had mocked them, laughed at weakness, ridiculed hope. And yet here, before her eyes, she had witnessed triumph born from determination, collaboration, and compassion. The small dragon flapped its wings again, this time with confidence. It soared, diving and climbing in loops that would have been impossible yesterday. Orethiel followed, circling protectively, her presence a steady reassurance. Rowan glanced at Seraphine. You wanted proof. Here it is. Not just that it can fly, but that persistence, care, and understanding can accomplish what strength alone cannot. Seraphine swallowed. I see that now. Lyra smiled gently, offering her hand to the human. You've learned an important lesson today. Never underestimate courage or the power of care. The sun fully rose over the harbor, painting the cliffs in golden light. Dragons soared above, humans watched below, and a new understanding was quietly forming between them. Seraphine, once proud and mocking, now observed in awe. She had laughed at them yesterday, but today, she had learned that the world was far richer and far stranger than she had ever imagined. And in that quiet harbor, amidst fluttering wings and whispered warmth, the first seeds of respect, and perhaps even friendship, were sown. Because sometimes, even the weakest can rise, and even the smallest human can change a dragon's destiny. The next morning, the harbor hummed with life, but not the ordinary bustle of fishermen and merchants. The air was thick with the scent of salt and warmth, the warmth of dragons returning to health, their fires mingling with the cool morning breeze. Orethiel had spent the night circling the cliffs, her massive wings cutting through the mist, watching over her child, who now practiced small loops along the rocky shores. Lyra walked alongside Rowan, her hand brushing against his arm as they surveyed the scene. It's different now, she murmured. Yesterday, she was scared, struggling for every movement. Today, she moves with confidence. Rowan nodded, adjusting the straps on the brace he had reinforced. Confidence is earned, not given. Every flap, every landing, every controlled fall. It teaches them their limits and how to surpass them. Nearby, the hatchling attempted another flight, this time toward the edge of the cliffs. Its small wings beat steadily, carrying it higher than it had managed before. Orethiel followed, her powerful presence like a shadowed guardian. Seraphine had returned, standing at the edge of the cliffs, her gaze fixed on the scene. She was quieter now, the laughter gone. Instead, there was an odd mixture of awe, hesitation, and a hint of shame. She had arrived expecting weakness and failure. Instead, she was confronted by determination, courage, and success. You've really done it, she admitted softly, almost to herself. Her pride made her words hesitant, but they carried a sincerity that had been absent yesterday. You've taken a crippled hatchling and helped it fly. Lyra smiled faintly. Not just fly, she corrected. We helped it grow, to trust, to survive, to be more than what the world expected of it. Rowan stepped forward. Strength isn't always about size or power. Sometimes it's about persistence, patience, and knowing how to help. The hatchling landed on a ledge near Seraphine, its small body trembling from exertion but alive with newfound energy. Orethiel nudged it gently, encouraging it to stretch its wings and prepare for another loop. Seraphine knelt slightly, reaching out toward the hatchling, unsure if she was allowed to touch it. It regarded her cautiously, then blinked, recognizing that she meant no harm. It listens to you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. And you understand it? Rowan shook his head. Not completely, but I know how to fix what's broken. And sometimes that's enough. Lyra laughed softly. Sometimes enough is all it takes to change a life, or a world. Orethiel dipped her head, releasing a wave of warm air that spread across the rocks and cliffs. The hatchling braced itself, feeling the gentle heat fill its chest, stimulating muscles that had long been weak. Slowly, steadily, it prepared for flight again. This time, when it leapt, it didn't falter. Its wings beat in perfect rhythm, each flap stronger than the last. It circled Orethiel once, then twice, before returning to land on Lyra's shoulder, proud and triumphant. Seraphine's lips parted in awe. It really can fly. I never thought. You underestimated them, Lyra said gently. And you underestimated us. That's a common mistake. Seraphine's eyes flickered downward, her hands tightening at her sides. She had laughed at them, mocked their efforts, and yet here she stood, witnessing proof that determination and compassion could overcome weakness. For the first time, she felt the sting of humility. Rowan crouched beside the hatchling, adjusting its small wing brace one last time. There. That should hold until it builds enough muscle strength. After that, flight will be natural. Orethiel lowered her head until her massive snout was near Rowan's shoulder. Her silver eyes, once dim with illness and weakness, now shone with gratitude and trust. The bond they had forged through struggle was tangible, unspoken, and deeply rooted. Seraphine, watching, felt something shift inside her. Pride, arrogance, and skepticism gave way to awe and respect. She had been wrong to laugh, wrong to dismiss, wrong to assume that weakness meant failure. You've taught me a lesson, she admitted finally, her voice steadier now. Not about dragons, but about courage and perseverance and hope. Lyra's eyes softened. Then take it with you, because sometimes the world needs to remember that even the smallest, weakest creatures can rise with the right care and guidance. Rowan rose to his feet, brushing the dust from his knees. And sometimes, even a human can make a difference where others think it's impossible. The hatchling flapped its wings once more, testing its balance, then darted into the air in a loop that carried it higher and farther than before. Orethiel followed, her powerful wings slicing through the sky, a living guardian of both her child and the fragile hope that had been restored. Seraphine watched silently, understanding finally why Rowan, Lyra, and Orethiel had persisted despite the odds. It wasn't just about flight. It was about trust, resilience, and refusing to accept the limits others imposed. Rowan looked out over the cliffs and the harbor, the wind tugging at his hair. We've only just begun, he said quietly. Tomorrow we'll work on endurance, and the day after aerial coordination. Flight is just the start. Lyra glanced at her human companion, smiling. You really believe that even this small victory can grow into something greater, don't you? Rowan nodded. Every small success leads to bigger ones. It's all connected. Healing one life, one wing, can change so much more than we expect. Orethiel circled above them, releasing a gentle, warm gust that ruffled hair, lifted papers, and stirred feathers along the cliffs. She dipped her head, acknowledging the human and the girl who had refused to abandon the crippled hatchling. Seraphine finally spoke again, softer this time, almost reverently. I see now. Laughter doesn't help. Scorn doesn't help. Only care, patience, and courage do. Lyra reached over, placing her hand over Seraphine's briefly. It's never too late to learn. Above the cliffs, the small hatchling flapped its wings, rising higher with each attempt. Its confidence soared alongside its body, strengthened not just by repaired muscles but by faith, patience, and a human mechanic who refused to quit. Rowan exhaled slowly, watching the dragon ascend. The impossible isn't gone, he said quietly. It's just waiting for someone willing to try. Seraphine, standing at the edge of the cliffs, nodded slowly. She had mocked them. She had doubted them. But now she understood. Strength and power weren't always measured in size or ferocity. Sometimes they were measured in persistence, in compassion, and in the courage to act when the world expected failure. And as the hatchling soared into the rising sun, wings strong and spirit unbroken, all three humans, Lyra, Rowan, and even Seraphine, knew that something extraordinary had begun. Not just a flight, not just a lesson, but a change in understanding, a bridge between worlds, and the beginning of a story that would be remembered for generations. because even the smallest dragon and the humblest human could rise above expectation, and in doing so reshape the world itself. The days that followed were filled with both wonder and subtle challenges. The hatchling, now stronger and more confident, explored the cliffs and shallow coves with increasing skill. Its wings had regained nearly full functionality, and it began practicing longer flights under Orethiel's watchful eye. Lyra guided each attempt, offering gentle encouragement and carefully measured heat to stimulate muscle recovery. Rowan, as always, tinkered with tools and braces, making subtle adjustments to ensure the hatchling's wings and joints were supported but not restricted. Seraphine returned daily, no longer with mockery in her voice, but with quiet curiosity and an air of tentative respect. She observed the interactions from a distance, occasionally asking questions, though always careful not to interfere. Her earlier scorn had given way to a growing fascination. She was beginning to realize that true strength wasn't always visible, that resilience often lay beneath fragile scales or delicate bones. One morning, as the sun broke over the horizon, Rowan was adjusting a mechanical brace on the hatchling's left wing when a shadow fell across the cliffs. Orethiel's head lifted, ears twitching, and Lyra followed her mother's gaze. A second dragon appeared, a sleek, dark-scaled male, considerably larger than the hatchling but not fully grown. He circled cautiously above the cliffs, watching from a distance. "Visitors?" Lyra asked quietly. Rowan stood, brushing dust from his hands. "Or trouble?" The newcomer descended slowly, landing a short distance away. Its amber eyes locked onto the hatchling, assessing, calculating. Orethiel shifted protectively, curling slightly around her young. The hatchling flinched but did not hide. It had learned that humans could be trusted, and perhaps, for the first time, that other dragons could be allies rather than threats. The male dragon rumbled low in his throat. "I am observing. You heal the weak." Rowan tilted his head. "Observing." The dragon's eyes narrowed. "You repair what others reject. You allow the small to rise. That is unusual." Lyra stepped closer to her mother, her hand brushing Orethiel's scales. "He's cautious, not hostile, but he's testing us." Seraphine, standing behind them, whispered, "Testing humans? Dragons rarely do that unless they intend to dominate or challenge." Rowan smiled faintly. "We passed the first test yesterday. Maybe we'll pass this one too." Over the next few hours, the dark-scaled dragon studied every interaction. He watched the hatchling attempt controlled flights, observed Rowan's careful mechanical adjustments, and noted the quiet warmth Lyra channeled to stabilize muscles. Slowly, the tension in his posture eased. "You are different," he admitted finally, voice like gravel rolling down a cliff. "Humans do not usually approach dragons with care. You listen. You observe. You repair. You do not demand." Rowan shrugged. "It's not complicated. You have something broken, I fix it. Simple." The dragon tilted his head, amber eyes flashing with curiosity. "You understand more than I expected. Perhaps you may help others." Lyra's eyes lit up. "Others? You mean other dragons?" "Yes. Injured. Abandoned. Weak. You're human. He can repair what nature or cruelty has broken." Orethiel exhaled a gentle plume of warmth. The dark dragon lowered his head, almost in deference. "Then teach me. Teach us." Rowan blinked. "Teach dragons." Lyra laughed softly. "It seems the roles have reversed. Not all teachers are human, and not all students are dragons, but some knowledge must flow both ways." From that day onward, the harbor transformed into a place of quiet industry and unusual harmony. Rowan built scaffolds and reinforced platforms to allow dragons of all sizes to safely practice flight and recovery. Lyra and Orethiel monitored the hatchlings, guiding their growth and encouraging cooperation between species. Seraphine, once skeptical and mocking, now studied alongside them, learning the intricate balance of magic, biology, and patience required to heal creatures long considered untouchable. The dark-scaled dragon, whose name was Thaler, became an unexpected ally. He watched closely, offering advice in subtle ways, teaching hatchlings how to manage energy and balance during flight, and helping Lyra understand aspects of dragon communication she had only glimpsed before. One afternoon, as Rowan tightened a brace on the hatchling's wing, a sudden cry rang out. A group of fishermen had discovered another injured dragon in the outer cove. A hatchling caught in discarded netting, its wing crushed. Rowan and Lyra rushed immediately, Orethiel and Thaler following. The sight was grim. The hatchling's leg was bent unnaturally, and its wings trembled. Pain and fear radiated from it like visible energy. Rowan knelt beside the creature, assessing quickly. This one's badly trapped. Needs careful handling, or we risk permanent damage. Lyra held her hands above the hatchling, channeling warmth to stabilize muscles. I'll keep it calm. It's scared, but it can trust us. Rowan worked methodically, freeing the netting and adjusting the fragile bones and muscles. The hatchling's cries softened as he applied his techniques, gently realigning the wing and leg while Lyra sustained a steady flow of energy. Orethiel hovered close, murmuring encouragement, while Thaler circled overhead, offering subtle guidance on posture and breathing to reduce stress. By the time the sun began to dip, the hatchling's injuries were stabilized. It shivered but flapped its wings experimentally, encouraged by the proximity of other dragons and humans. Slowly, it managed a weak but steady hover above the ground, trembling at first, then steadier as confidence returned. Seraphine watched in awe, no laughter this time. She had arrived expecting failure. Instead, she had witnessed a symphony of care, patience, and cooperation between species once thought irreconcilable. Rowan stood, wiping sweat from his brow. One more step, he said. Tomorrow we'll start endurance exercises. We'll make sure it's ready for flight like the others. Lyra smiled, brushing her hair from her face. It's incredible. All of this started because one human refused to walk away from a dragon no one else would touch. Orethiel rumbled softly, the vibration of gratitude passing through the air. Thaler landed nearby, lowering his head in acknowledgement of the human's skill and courage. The hatchling nuzzled Rowan's shoulder, a quiet testament to trust formed in hardship. Seraphine stepped forward finally, voice steady. I see now. You've healed more than dragons. You've changed hearts. You've changed the way humans and dragons can work together. Rowan shrugged lightly. We're just repairing what's broken. That's all anyone can do. Lyra laughed softly, looking at the group of dragons and humans now gathering along the cliffs. Sometimes, just repairing is the start of something extraordinary. Above them, the hatchlings flapped and soared, practicing in loops and spirals. Orethiel and Thaler circled with grace, guiding their young with care. Rowan adjusted another brace, readying it for the next day, while Seraphine observed quietly, her mind forever altered by the lesson she had once mocked. The harbor, once ordinary, now thrummed with life and purpose. Dragons, humans, and hatchlings moved in delicate harmony, a testament to trust and courage. What had begun as the healing of a single injured dragon had grown into a network of cooperation, understanding, and mutual respect. And as the sun set, casting golden light over scales and stone alike, Rowan realized quietly that this bond between species, built from patience, ingenuity, and compassion, was something far greater than any one of them could have imagined. Because sometimes, saving a single life is the spark that lights an entire world on fire.